Well, if you're looking for something to grow in your shade perennial garden, you're tired of hostas, or maybe you just want to add a little bit of variety to it, you might want to think about planting a heuchera. Now, traditionally, we've thought of heucheras as kind of a mounding green leafed plant, and what we were focusing on were the flowers. Heucheras come in several different species with common names such as coral bells, also alum root, and rock geranium. And the flowers were what we were focusing on because we had these nice tall stems and the little bell-shaped flowers that would come off of the plant during the early summer. But anymore, heucheras are planted more for their foliage than they are for their flower. And we've got a case in point right here. This is called Palace Purple, and it's a heuchera that's been out for quite some time. In fact, it was one of the perennial plants of the year back in 1991. Now, Palace Purple has a habit very similar to most heucheras. It's kind of a mounding form, and overall, heucheras run anywhere from 1 to 1.5 feet tall and 1 to 3 feet in diameter. And you can see here we have a very nice mound. Now, as you look at this plant, you can see that we really have some pretty foliage. And as we look at the back of this foliage, you can see some other qualities that are common to heucheras. You see the hairy stem that we have here, and also the hairiness on the back side of the leaf. That's some nice texture, and we also have this beautiful purple color. Now, all heucheras have this hairiness to the stem in varying degrees, and the particular one here has a wonderful purple on the back. We turn it over on the front, and we have a very nice kind of greenish bronze color to it. And this foliage looks very nice all summer long. As I said, heucheras can actually take a little bit more, a little drier situation than your hostas do. So sometimes they're a better plant to have in a situation if you can't get as much water to them. Now, we have this Palace Purple here with beautiful purple leaves, but there are several other varieties that are available. Now, this heuchera is called Pewter Vale, and as you look at the foliage, you can see why it's got that name. We have some beautiful kind of pewterish cast to the leaves here. These are just gorgeous. And as we look underneath, we have kind of a light pinkish purple color. And you can see that the stems of this, while they are still hairy, aren't nearly like the Palace Purple. So we don't have quite as much of that contrast here underneath. But our leaves are beautiful. Now, this has a mounding habit, and this one hasn't been in quite so long, but again, about 1 foot tall and about 2 feet in diameter is what we're going to have here. And it has just beautiful foliage. Now, if you want something with a little bit more purple in it, you might try Plum Pudding, which has almost a wine-colored leaf to it. And this is just a very striking heuchera for the garden. Now, if you're looking for some foliage and you're not really wanting some in the purple area, there are several different varieties of variations on the green foliage theme. And right here, we have one that has variegated green foliage called Frosty. And you can see, looking closely, we still have the scalloped edged leaves, and our stems, instead of being purple, we have the green on the back, and then we have this nice kind of whitish cream-colored variegation on the top. And you can see, by planting several different varieties or cultivars of heuchera together, that you can get some nice color variation in your shade garden. Now, there's another plant that is very similar in both habit and in growth requirements to the heuchera, and that's because it's a cross between a heuchera and a tiarella. And so you might be out shopping and notice plants that are called heucherellas, and we have one right here. This is called Pink Frost, and you can see that we have these pretty little pink flowers. Now, the difference here is that the flowers, instead of being the more bell-shaped, they're much more like the tiarella, and they're kind of like little stars here. And it has a very dainty little bloom on it, and they seem to bloom more prolifically than the heucheras do. Now, as you look down at the foliage here, you can see that we again have very similar to heuchera foliage here. While the flowers are a little bit more like tiarellas, the foliage is a little bit more like the heucheras. So this is another plant. They tend to be a bit smaller than the heucheras here in their form. Another variety that is really pretty is called Bridget Blooms, and this is another very pretty little heucherella. So heucheras and heucherellas are plants that you might think about putting in your own shade garden. Now, one bonus about a heuchera, if you have a black walnut tree, it is one of the plants that can stand jug-loan and will grow under a black walnut. So yet another reason to plant a heuchera in your own garden.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.